All right, let's talk about something we've all felt. You get this amazing idea, you set a goal, you're fired up for a week, and then poof, you stop, you fall off, and you're just left with that little voice in the back of your head.
Ah, that voice. It's a killer, right? Because you know it's true. Deep down, we all know consistency is the secret sauce. But actually doing it? Man, it feels like you're fighting a war every single day.
And that's exactly what this is. It's an invisible war. It's a quiet, constant, daily battle for the future you say you want. And here's the thing, you're already in the fight, whether you know it or not. So to win this war, you gotta understand the battlefield. And it all boils down to this one idea, the invisible success curve. See, every single day, every single choice is bending your life's trajectory. You're either curving up toward success or you're curving down toward failure. And the crazy part is, the choices that point you one way or the other, they're tiny. They seem completely insignificant. Reading just 10 pages? That's a little nudge up. Watching Netflix instead? A tiny nudge down. These actions feel like they don't matter in the moment, but they are silently and powerfully setting the course for your entire life. And this is the trap. This is where everyone gets it wrong. For a long, long time, those two paths look exactly the same. After a month, the person hitting the gym and the person hitting the couch, they look pretty much identical. There's no immediate reward, right? So you think, hey, what's the big deal? And you quit, usually right before the magic of compounding is about to kick in, and those two paths split forever. So if the right choices are so small and simple, why is it so hard to just do them? Well, that leads us to the central paradox of this whole thing. It's kind of tricky.
This quote, man, is just brutally honest, isn't it? The things that lead to massive success, reading a few pages, drinking a glass of water, going for a walk, they're easy. But that's the problem. Their simplicity is a trap. Because when you skip them, nothing bad happens. Not today, anyway. You skip the gym, you don't have a heart attack. You eat the burger, you don't gain 10 pounds overnight. So it's easy to think it doesn't matter. And you skip again and again, creating 1,000 tiny steps on that downward curve.
Imagine you're trying to move a giant 5,000-pound flywheel. You get in front of it, you brace yourself, and you give it everything you've got for that very first push. And what happens? It barely moves. Maybe an inch. It feels pointless. It feels impossible. That's day one of your new habit. But you don't quit. You show up the next day and the next. You keep pushing. It's still a grind, don't get me wrong, but something's different. That inch becomes a foot. And before you know it, you've gotten one full rotation. You're starting to build real, honest-to-goodness momentum. And then it happens. The breakthrough. After hundreds and hundreds of those consistent pushes, the flywheel starts to spin on its own. All that stored energy, all that momentum, it takes over. And this is when people will show up and see this thing spinning and ask you, wow, what was your one big secret? But you'll know the truth. It wasn't one big push. It was all of them. Okay, but let's be real for a second. Nobody is perfect. You're not going to push that flywheel every single day without fail. Life happens. You will get off track. So the real question isn't how to be perfect. It's what do you do when you inevitably mess up? Take a look at this number, 97%. That sounds like a failing grade, right? But what if I told you it was actually the secret to one of the greatest achievements in human history? That's right. The rocket that went to the moon was off course 97% of the time. Think about that. It didn't get there by flying in a perfect laser straight line. No way. It got there by constantly drifting off course and then constantly, gently correcting its path. Thousands of tiny adjustments. And this is so, so important. You are going to drift. You're going to skip the workout. You're going to eat the pizza. This is not failure. It's just part of the journey. The real failure is thinking that one drift means the whole trip is ruined. It's not. Winners aren't the people who never drift. They're just the ones who correct their course the fastest and get right back on track.
All right, so we get it. We need to build that flywheel momentum, and we need to course correct when we drift. But how do we actually turn that idea into something we do every day? It starts with understanding one really important difference.
Let me ask you a quick riddle. You've got 5 frogs chilling on a lily pad. One of them decides to jump off. So, how many frogs are left on the lily pad?
The answer? It's 5. All 5 frogs are still sitting right there.
And that's the whole point. See, the frog only decided. He never actually jumped. And we do this all the time, don't we? We decide we're going to get in shape, we decide we're going to learn that skill, but a decision means absolutely nothing until you take that first physical action. The journey doesn't start until you jump. Now, once you do start jumping, here's the most encouraging thing you'll ever hear. There is way less competition than you think. The author tells this great story about his daughter. She was super intimidated by this tough college program she was in, but after just a few weeks, 80% of the students had basically vanished. They just stopped showing up. And she ended up graduating at the top of her class, not because she was a genius, but just because she kept showing up. Your biggest advantage is simply not quitting what everyone else does.
And just look at the ridiculous power of showing up in one tiny area. There's this story about a shoeshine woman who would read trashy romance novels all day to pass the time. Now, what if instead she had just read 10 pages a day about business, or investing, or self-improvement? In 5 years, that would be 60 to 75 life-changing books. So think about your own downtime. What are you feeding your brain? Because what you put in is what you become. Quality input builds a quality mind. When you really strip it all away, this entire philosophy comes down to one simple, totally unavoidable choice. And it's all about the price you're willing to pay.
Because make no mistake, you are always going to pay a price. You can either pay the price of discipline today, that feeling of discomfort, of sacrifice, of doing the hard thing. Or you can avoid that now and pay the much, much heavier price of regret for the rest of your life. And one of those prices leads to freedom, while the other leads to a prison of what if. Which one are you choosing? And that choice, it's made in those little moments when no one else is watching. It's just you and the promise you made to yourself. You said you go to the gym, but you're tired and the couch looks good. What do? Every single time you keep that promise to yourself, you build integrity, you build self-trust. And every time you break it, you chip away at that foundation. Winning those private, invisible battles is how you win the entire war. So the war for your future is happening right now, in the very next small, simple choice you're about to make. It's invisible, sure, but it is not optional. You're on the battlefield right now, so the only question left is what's your next move?